Could we please have the roll taken? Kim?
Esther Lynn. Here. Angeli Agaptep. Here. James Bolton. Here. Robert Brody. Here. Alex Chan. Here. Jim Efting. Judy Gillespie. Here. Karim Gongora. Here. Dolores Heisinger. Here. Michael Iseri. Larry Kaplan. Here. Paul Kramer. Here. Alex Lawrence. Here. Bethany Pick. Vince Reyes. Here. Shelley Torriaba. Here. David Torres. Patricia Villalobos. Here. And Chair, Mr. Fox.
I'm here. Our meeting is being webcast, so if you are going to be speaking, please identify yourself so the people who are watching on the webcast will know who is participating in the meeting. And also, because it's being webcast, unless you are speaking, please keep your microphones off because it does pick up and it's going to create a problem. So the okay. Having taken the roll call, the next item on the agenda is a call for public comment. Is there anybody who wishes to make a public comment? You only have one person in the audience, and he does not at this time. Okay, next item is the approval of the February 1st Committee Bar Examiner Public Meeting Minutes. Are there any amendments, corrections? Yes, Vince.
On the attendance, I attended.
Okay, Kim, we'll pick that up. Thank you. Any other corrections? If not, is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor? Or opposed? Minutes are approved. The next item is the report from our director on key statistical indicators. Amy.
Yes. Good morning. This is Amy Nunez, and I want to talk about the statistical indicators. I want everybody to note that this report displays data through January 2019. Typically, at the March meeting, we would have data through February. However, we implemented the AIM system in February, and I'll give you an update on that process. And so that required that we shut down our system mid-February. And so we would not have the full data. So we plan to have the full data, that is partial data from the AS400 and data from our new AIM system for the next meeting. So for that reason, I just want to point out that that is data from January. And a few things to highlight with the January data is that if you compare all our stats, that is our applications by type and items that we took action on, they are comparable between 2019 and 2018. The only item that has a slight increase are the moral character applications for 2019. So in January, we received 3% more applications than we have in 2018. I pointed this number out in the past too. Moral character is one area where our numbers are in the volume are increasing generally. And also, another thing to note is that we did not have a January meeting for the CBE, which is a reason if you look at the statistics, we did not act on any of the petitions related to moral character, testing accommodations, or law school reports, and that's why those are missing. So just a few things I want to point out about the key statistical indicators. Are there any questions? Okay, great. All right, so the next item is about the April 26th meeting. That's been attached as item 102. This is a 2-day meeting that's scheduled to occur in San Francisco. This day 2 will consist of the question selection for the July 2019 California bar exam. I just want to remind everybody that if you have a conflict that is a relative or a friend that will be taking the bar exam, I want to encourage each of you to let Lisa Cummins and I know about this, because remember, what we typically do is send you a copy of the questions that will be discussed in advance of the meeting, so we would need to know that prior to that. And so we'll send an email reminder about this, but I just want to remind everybody that that is what's scheduled to happen on day 2 of the April meeting. And so the sooner you alert us, the better. Yes, Larry?
Are there other agenda items on the second day?
What we typically do is if anything that we had not finished on day 1 gets rolled over, and we typically needed that time, but we haven't in this cycle or in this year, or maybe even towards the end of last year, because remember, we now stopped meeting as a subcommittee, and as a full committee, we've been able to really accomplish all our agenda items. So I can't predict what's going to be covered, but this is what's been happening. All right. So I need the clicker because I want to show. Oh, do you mind passing me that? Sorry. So the next item I want to report on is AIMS, and give everybody an AIMS update. So we implemented the AIMS system. This is the Admissions Information Management System on February 28th around 9 o'clock. And the exam registrations for the first year law student exam, the California bar exam for July 2019 opened on March 1st. And I want to show you a copy of our dashboard. So the system launched, as I mentioned, on February 28th, and we are tracking, or through this dashboard, we're able to track up to the minute information. So this is just an example of some of the information that we're tracking that previously would have taken a lot of resources and the manipulation of multiple systems in order to do this. So as you can see here, this is a report that was run on March 20th at 12:48. And as at that moment, as I mentioned, we launched on February 28th. We have approximately 12,000 applicants that have logged on to our system. That is, they have a portal open in Salesforce. Of those, 5,200 approximately have registered for the California bar exam that's coming up. And so in our first 5 hours of operations, when we opened the system, we already had 2,000 people register. Other item I want to point out here is we had 1,900 moral character applications that have been submitted since the system's been up, and approximately 6,163 payments have been made, totaling about $7.8 million. In terms of the volume, so one of the features of our dashboard is you can actually click into each, where it says, for example, under CBX, where you see that 5.2K, if you hit that view report, you actually get the names of the applicants and can dig down to the level of detail to actually access even a single applicant. So obviously security measures are in place to ensure that the appropriate staff access the appropriate documents. But this gives you a sense of how much we can drill down, and also our basic stats that we're interested in that we typically report on. I do want to also report that we did hit a few roadblocks that some of you may have heard about, and that is initially we had issues with our payments, the payment center that's attached to our Salesforce product, and we had some situations where some people made multiple payments. The bug has been identified and addressed, so that's no longer happening. And we've also been able to address the problem by reimbursing our applicants to ensure that they were reimbursed for the extra payments. The other item that presented a challenge with the system was the data migration. And specifically, the problems were with the data that was importing was either incorrect or not importing at all. Sometimes it was a data transpose. Sometimes things weren't falling into the appropriate cells. And so we continue to work on that and monitor that. We've reached out to applicants that are affected. We've been able to, as I mentioned, address the majority of the bugs. There are other features that we also continue to want to enhance, but for the most part, Ames had a successful launch despite the delays. Any questions about Ames? And we do hope to set a demonstration up in the near future at one of our CVE meetings. Okay. All right, now on to Appendix I implementation. So Appendix I, where we're at with the implementation of the board recommendations, we talked about the rules that went out for public comment. These are required for the implementation of the initiatives that we have, that were proposed. And so the public rule comments commenced on January 29th, as I reported previously. They closed on March 15th. The comments are being compiled and reviewed, and for a feedback and a report that will be going to the board at the May 2019 meeting. One thing about the comments is that when one of the considerations are the feedback, they're going to be presented, and there's a chance that there might be either more modifications made, and if that were the case, then we would have another 45-day public comment period. If not, then there's a potential that these rules will be implemented as soon as May at that meeting. All right. Oh, Paul.
So I did take the invitation to read the things, and I filed some comments. Aside from the part that many of us object to, I didn't really didn't find anything new. I made one mistake. I thought they were taking away our role in selecting exam questions, but this morning I clarified that that's a first-year exam, which we never select anyway. So I've sent an email to Greg clarifying that. But so anyway, I did make the effort. I think there's a lot of room for improvement in the rules, but Desti told me this morning that that's another project that's going to go ahead at some point. To, for instance, I find some of the language in there is not really written in regulatory style. It's more a statement of just the way the world is, rather than saying the world shall be this way. But that's for another time. But anyway, I did look and made that effort.
Thank you. All right. So the other initiatives, so aside from the state bar rules, there are other Appendix I implementation actions that we have taken. The first is we sent a solicitation to select members, so people could not nominate themselves to serve either on the Law School Council or on CS bars. That member selection has been completed. We've not been able to notify members. We'll be doing that next week, so that we are on board for our first meeting on April 12th. So more information on that, but that selection process has been complete. We are also, we've enhanced the Law School Assembly. We talked about, one of the recommendations from the board was to ensure that we had more substantive topics on that agenda. We're working on that, and that is scheduled for May 2019, and more information will be forthcoming on that. And again, Law School Assembly is where all of the law schools are invited, all California law schools, and there'll be one session in Northern California and one in Southern California. The other item, that recommendation, is related to the Moral Character Working Group, looking for a volunteer, and that solicitation process will open on Monday. The idea is to have people nominate themselves. Law School Council will, or the newly formulated Law School Council will select a member for Law School Council, as will CS bars, and we'll also inviting for that 3 members from the CVE. So we're looking for nominations next week.
What's the purpose of that group?
A good question. So, Mark, can you tell us a little bit more about the Moral Character Working Group and the intent of that?
Yeah, this is a working group that arises from the implementation of Appendix I and a recommendation from Appendix I. And the purpose of the working group is to review the standards by which moral character determinations are made. So it's sort of a high-level review of our standards and our guidelines. And the purpose is to ensure, to continue to perpetuate the sort of consistency in the kind of decisions that we make, the transparency, to give more transparent guidelines to the applicants themselves. So, we're not, so that's sort of it in a nutshell, Paul. But I'm sorry?
Our equivalent of the sentencing guidelines.
It
Do this,
could
you
be.
should
That's going to be up.
expect.
It's going to be up to the working group as to sort of what how the standards that they review, what kind of form they take. But I don't believe that. I mean, this is not. I don't necessarily. I mean, I know what the sentencing guidelines are. I don't know that we're going to go that far, but that's going to be a discussion for the working group to have.
And then ultimately that comes to this body.
Yes. Yes.
I believe so. Yes. Yes.
And it sounds like policymaking, and we're supposed to do more of that, so.
Yeah, and also the idea is to take a look at what we are considering in the moral character determinations now. Mark attended a seminar, I think we talked about this last time. Mark attended a one-day meeting several months ago with folks from the Stanford Criminal Justice Center.
Stanford Criminal Justice Center.
And they were looking at how states are considering rehabilitation for folks who have been previously convicted of felonies. And this is the type of thing that we want to have sort of a clear, common understanding and think about whether the practices that we have employed up until now are the same practices that we should employ going forward, or maybe whether, looking at whether our practices are not sort of consistent with the way other states are doing it, or the focus in society on rehabilitation, and seeing if there should be some changes in sort of the weight that we give to various things. So it really is an opportunity to revisit the guidelines, and in doing that, sort of provide some clear, transparent information for folks, right? Which I know the law schools want, I know the students want, so they sort of have a sense of, okay, there's, something like this doesn't appear to be a bar so long as I demonstrate X, Y, or Z. So giving folks an understanding of what they can expect and not have huge surprises in the moral character process.
So, looking at the rehabilitation factors, aggravating, mitigating circumstances, review those again, and see, and, update them to the extent they need to be updated, as Don is referring to. So, it'll be an exciting working group, I think, to be on.
I'm sorry to arrive late and jump in, but Donna or Mark, did you already mention, or do you want to, Senator Umberg's bill? I know you've been working with Doug a little bit to help shape the responses. Mark, this is the bill that is going to be introduced or has been introduced. Do you want to say it? Prohibiting our looking at or requesting psychiatric records. And so that's something that's out there. We have tried to suggest that perhaps it's premature to introduce legislation to that effect, but that instead that process should trail the working group effort, that we could be intentional about incorporating that issue into those areas that the working group will look at. But at this point, it doesn't appear that the senator is willing to do that. So we will contend with that over the next couple of months, and I think continue to try to see if we can reach, or he can reach some kind of comfort level such that he would let the working group proceed rather than introducing a bill first. So, which senator is that? Umberg.
Umberg.
Yes.
Orange County.
Yeah. Apparently, he has a constituent who had a pretty complicated set of issues, and she shared it with him, and so he's taken this issue on.
All right, so the next Appendix I implementation component that we are also working on is developing recruiting the attorney for moral character. We're in the process of that recruitment now, or getting that posted. Developing the decisional library. So we are working with staff internally to start that process. And with that, maybe we should take a moment. I want to introduce to you the program manager replacing Mark Torres-Gill as our moral character program manager, and this is Tara Clark. Mark, I don't know if you want to say a few things about
No,
Tara.
I'm actually very happy to introduce Tara here on my right as the new program manager. She's joined us about, I think, 5 years ago or so in moral character, and the last 2 years she's been supervisor in the moral character unit. So she's very, very learned in what we do and how we do things in moral character, and we've been impressed by the work that she's done. In addition to that, she's spearheaded the implementation of AIMS in the moral character unit and has done a very, very good job on that. So with that, I'd like to, introduce Tara as joining us, in moral character as the program manager.
All right, and lastly, we are also in the midst of contracting with the psychometrician, again, on the recommendation for evaluating our grading process and the exam question sampling for the bar exam. All right. Any questions on any other of the Appendix I implementation? Great. So with that, we're also now going to talk about the California Attorney Practice Analysis. Robbie will be speaking to that. And again, I just want to remind everybody, this is the job analysis for the attorneys.
So this is an ongoing process, but just a brief update. So
All right, thank you, Robbie.
I have a quick question.
Oh,
So what we're looking for is a day in the life, or like what are actual specifics? I guess we'll get back.
it's a mixture of both. It's a
Okay.
day in the life. What are you doing right now? Are you doing
Okay.
legal research? Are you involved in the management of your practice? Are you meeting with a client? That kind of snapshot, we're hoping to get a better picture of a wide range with a focus on new attorneys. They're the ones who would have most recently taken the bar. I think maybe from new admittee to 5 years. I think it's going to be very interesting. It's something the bar has not done. I would say, Amy, I hope you would agree, I was very impressed with our vendor that's initiating it, although they are not lawyers per se. He seemed to have a very good grasp on what our goals are and how to accomplish them, and, you know, kind of getting us together to pick the categories. I've been impressed so far.
So, So is participation kind of on a voluntary basis, or is it kind of a part of a process, or what?
Totally voluntary.
Okay.
We have, you know, contacts with a fair number of groups, and I think that we're gonna have no problem getting a large number of questionnaires out. You probably got one when you renewed your bar dues, a questionnaire that was voluntary, and I think the response there was very good. So it's gonna be similar to that. And as I said, there's gonna be a little bit of an incentive for those that agree to provide what they're doing throughout the day over a period of time. So
Awesome, thank you. I appreciate that.
Great. All right. Next item I want to talk about is the project called California Bar Exam Strategies and Stories. We formally refer to it as a productive mindset intervention. And I'm going to bring everybody up to date because I know that we have a lot of new members that probably weren't aware of this initiative. So what this program is an online program that's designed to address barriers, friction, and stress that bar exam applicants may be experiencing in anticipation of the exam. So in July 2018, the California State Bar partnered with researchers that created an online program that incorporates an introductory film, audio, and written stories from prior test takers as a way of creating a strategy to addressing and creating a productive mindset. That project in July 2018 yielded promising outcomes in the sense that we've discovered a 7.4% improvement in bar passage rates. The program seemed most effective with first-time takers. So given the promising outcomes, we're going to participate and launch this one more time. So with the July 2019 California Bar registration, we also opened the registration to join this. And again, this is now being referred to as a California Strategies and Stories program. We are hoping to register approximately 3,000 applicants potentially. Upon our last review on Monday, we checked, we had 600 applicants of the 5,000 that had registered as of Monday. We're not sure if we're going to meet that 3,000, but we're trying to get as many people registered. We also changed our registration process. One of the problems that we experienced last time is that the window of opportunity for repeat takers was very short. There was very little to no room for repeat takers to register. We had to reopen registration. We have now coordinated on our registration deadline so that everybody's eligible to register up to when our registration date closes, which is June 3rd. And we also are going to be sending email reminders to people who perhaps did not register initially and may have changed their mind. And we're going to have sufficient reminders to allow for anybody who's registered already, as well as once results are out, any potential repeat takers that have registered, to grant them the same opportunity, to participate in the program. So again, just want to alert everyone that we are participating and conducting the Productive Mindset, or the California Bar Exam Strategies and Stories program once more.
So that opened up for the most recent group or for the past group as well? Because I remember there was like a cutoff point and then we extended it.
Yes.
And so it's capturing.
So it's
which
going
groups
to
now?
open at the same time as a bar exam application. So
Okay.
We opened again on March 1st and we close on June 3rd. And so registration for this initiative will be open at the same time as a bar exam. We're also going to send out email reminders, and we're ensuring that we have email reminders to those who have registered so far, as well as to the end of registration. So we will eliminate that issue that we had last year.
So one of the concerns I had was, I guess, some of the communications weren't exactly clear on what the program was. And so some applicants reached out and were like, this isn't what I think it is. So if there's a little bit more clarity we could do in our communications and kind of a little more, I know we just opened it, it was just starting, so that those type of things happen. But I think that'd be helpful, I guess, to the applicants.
We've added information. So we have an FAQ page on our website. We've added some information within the exam registration so that it explains a little bit about the program. And then also towards the end. And once somebody starts linking to register, there's more information about the program as well.
So, for my clarity, so we're compiling questions, stories of people who've taken the test successfully, and we're sharing that with applicants who were unsuccessful? No?
Any
Okay.
applicant who volunteers to participate in the initiative, that includes the film, hearing these stories, and other parts that engage the applicant.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Excuse me, have you received,
No.
I'm sorry, have you received very positive response from those who have taken or have been involved in this program as to the results of it and how helpful it was to them?
Well, the stats that we have are this, the fact that 7.4% of applicants that went through the entire process, that is, some people engaged, for example, in the film and did not continue with the other modules. And so those that engaged in all aspects did experience a higher bar passage rate. But in terms of feedback from applicants as to how, I don't think we have that information. In order to create this, I think there was a survey that was done prior to that to gauge what some of the concerns are, people's mindset going into the exam. We learned that applicants that had other responsibilities outside of law school, those taking care of children, parents, employment issues. The goal of this initiative is to help create a positive mindset to address and ease some of that tension in the process. But your questions about the feedback that was gauged, I don't think we got individual responses. We did, what we heard most primarily was the missed opportunity that we've addressed in this round of people who weren't able to register in a timely fashion.
Thank you.
Sure.
We do have a press release on the results from the first phase of the intervention that's posted on the website, as well as sort of an executive summary that the researchers provided to us. And as Amy indicated, the results are extremely promising for those who went all the way through the intervention. The researchers have been really concerned about our messaging of that, given the relatively small sample size from their perspective of those who went all the way through the entire intervention. So we have, on the one hand, very promising results in terms of the difference in bar pass rate, but offset by a relatively small sample size, hence our efforts to increase the size this time around. And I also wanted to note that they designed the intervention for first-time U.S. law student test takers. What they found is they had many, many repeat takers in their pool. And so they have indicated that this next go-around, they are going to look to modify the intervention for those who are repeat test takers, which I think will be really beneficial.
Excellent.
Amy, I got a question for you. Is June 3rd the deadline?
Yeah, it would have been June 1st.
June 1st.
But it lands on a weekend, so we're doing it on June 3rd.
Is June 3rd a more of a logistical deadline, or is there some kind of methodology adopted to determine that deadline? And I say this because the bar is in July, and so that sort of leaves a huge gap between the deadline until the day of the bar exam, and so I wonder how that would impact on the overall results of the study.
Well, our deadlines for our application are regulated by a California State Bar rule, or a California rule of court. So that it used to be June 15th was our cutoff, and that got changed to June 3rd. So we're just conforming to that cutoff. So I guess the answer is it is logistical. That is when we cut off. However, June 3rd cutoff allows people to participate in this initiative until July 26th or 27th when the bar exam opens.
Okay.
Follow-up questions?
Yes.
Sorry. So this is only available to applicants. It's not available to people going to take the test, right? To seniors, to people who are going to sit for the bar exam, who's a qualified applicant of this program. That's right. Is it open to first-time law students, or is it only open to people who failed the test?
It's open to anybody who is planning to sit for the July bar exam.
Oh, okay. So it's very it's like a quarter type thing, right? Where it's only certain parts of the year that you could access that data and information.
So it's right now it is just being offered in the sort of period of time from June to July of 2018 in preparation for the exam. I think
Oh, I get it. Okay.
the theory is that this is really the time to sort of help people. And I do encourage you to read the executive summary that Leah mentioned. It's on the website that talks about sort of the stress factors that really, and other psychological factors that impact test taking, and using this opportunity right before the test to address those issues so the students can sort of better prepare for the test and go into the test without sort of those extra stressors.
Okay.
So that's why it's offered in that period of time.
Okay. Because I know there's people that when they sit for the bar, they take a year off and they study and they preparation. So if they so that registration opens, then they have the opportunity to use that as a part of their studying process. Correct? Okay. I just wanted to make that clear. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Oh, Delores.
I have a quick question about one of the items in your report. There was mention of contracting with a psychometrician.
Yes.
So my question is this an open process? Are you actively requesting proposals from various psychometricians? Because I believe the one that has currently been used has been with the Bar Association for decades.
Yes, he has.
So are you openly seeking other people, or is this person automatically going to get?
We are going to open that as a solicitation.
And the only reason I ask that is that I think even psychometricians can lose objectivity over time. So that's counterintuitive, right? But
okay.
Right. Okay.
Point taken. All right. The next item. Other recent developments. I talked about the nomination results. We will have those next week, and we will be alerting those that will be onboarding. Jim, do you want to say anything about this?
No, that's fine.
And then our first scheduled meeting right now is tentatively scheduled for April 12th.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, would it be appropriate to talk about the most recent bar exam test, or would this not be a good opportunity?
No, if you have a comment or a
Oh,
question.
no, I did go visit the Ontario Convention, and I just wanted to say they're doing a great job down there. So definitely an amazing team there, and it was definitely eye-opening for me because it was my first time attending, and it was massive. I mean, it reminded me of SAT when I had to take that, and that wasn't a great experience. But I mean, what I found in the State Bar and being a member is there's so many people who've stuck with us for 15, 25 years. And I think that's kind of our strength. And then now they're working on ways that they're passing down knowledge because people are definitely need to retire, prefer to retire. And so I just wanted to just say great job there because a professional staff, great work. I mean, it was seamless. It was everything was very procedural and done above board. So I just wanted to share that comment.
Thank you. That's really appreciated, I'm sure, by staff.
Wonderful. All right. So another item that we wanted to add, it's a very recent development, is some of you may have heard about Western State College of Law. There was a push to the schools on the verge of closing. And so Natalie has an update on efforts that the State Bar has taken and explored to help address and accommodate the law students of that school.
Sure. So thanks, Amy. So many of you may already know Western State is an ABA law school, ABA-approved law school in Orange County. It's the oldest law school in Orange County. And they've fallen into a receivership status. The program was in compliance with the ABA until there were financial issues with the parent owner of their university, Argosy University. And so it went into receivership in January, and they've been working out what that means. And this is really a very active situation, changing moment by moment. So we are in close conversation with the school and with the CALS and registered schools to figure out how we can help these students as the situation evolves. Many of you may have heard in the media, part of the issue is that the parent did not disperse the students' loans, so they're under financial stress right now, and the Department of Education is working on that element. The ABA and we and the school are working on helping the students. I'm happy to say that at this point there is an approved plan in place so that the seniors who plan to take the bar exam this summer will be ready, and I'd like to extend a thank you to operations and management who put together an expedited plan to accept transcripts to make it easier for the students. It's just a little bit of stress off their plate, and they were able to respond very quickly, so a thank you to Tammy and your team. In addition, there was a real fear that we would see something we had never seen before, which is to see a school close in the middle of the semester. That would have required some quick action that fortunately the bar and other partners were ready to take, but the receiver has been given permission to disperse funds to keep the school open through the end of the semester. That brings us into a more normal situation, but obviously not typical. It's hard to create a specific plan as to what to do, but I would propose to the committee that it may be appropriate to set up a couple of conference calls with our registered and accredited schools just to go over the transfer policies, make sure everyone is updated on the situation. We've received a lot of expression of interest from the schools to work with Western State to help these students, and I think they would appreciate a show of support from this body in that endeavor. And at that point, I'll turn it to Alex for comment on that possibility. Or also any questions you may have about the situation.
Yes, we talked about this, me, Natalie, and Kareem a couple days ago. In general, I think this would be a great opportunity for, like she mentioned, this board to support any efforts, specifically with the students. So doing things like a webinar or open conference call, the schools could participate would be very helpful.
Mm-hmm. And in particular, where the schools can be helpful is in working with the students that weren't quite ready to graduate, and they're trying to come up with possible visiting options for them. And our schools can be very creative, very agile, very fast in this circumstance. And it's a way that the State Bar can offer a lot of help.
Question. I understand Western State is one of the California accredited law schools, is that right?
It's actually ABA approved.
But is it also accredited by us?
Only by extension. Every ABA approved school is deemed accredited under the CALS system, but it operates under the ABA rules. Mm-hmm. And when it deviates from its rules, it gets that permission from the ABA.
Do we know if ABA has sort of looked into the financial situation as far as, I would assume this is not an issue that just comes up out of nowhere, but I would assume this has been a prevailing issue, at least for the last couple of years, given the financial strain that the school has experienced.
The ABA does have a standard related to finance, as the State Bar does. Actually, the balance sheet of the school was strong. The issue happened here once the parent ran into further issues and didn't disperse the student loans. So it's something the ABA would have been looking for at the school level, but not at the parent level. And I know that the ABA is in contact with the receiver, but at this point, the receiver, working with the Department of Education, is in control because of the issues related to the student loans. So they did look, but within their nucleus, the school was sound.
Then I think the elephant in the room question here is, how do we prevent things of this nature to repeat as far as with respect to all the California accredited schools that are under our supervision? Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that question. That's something that we've begun to already think about as well. We have several schools that are owned by parents, fortunately not this particular parent. We generally, as part of the inspection process, look not only at the school but their parent, but this is a fresh opportunity to remind us that the standard should be reviewed. And as part of the review this summer, we'd be happy to add that as a topic.
Please do. I would love to know. Thank you.
All right, So this is the end of the director's report.
The next item on the agenda is examinations. David Torres is in the middle of a homicide trial, and so he cannot be with us today. Paul is going to sit in for David and give some comments in regard to numbers 0-200, the goals.
Okay, well, we have the goals before us. Does anybody have any questions or modifications to the proposed goals? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve these? Second? Okay, any, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries. That's it.
That's got to be one of the quickest reports. Thank you.
Quick question, is that okay?
Yes,
Appropriate?
sure.
We had a presentation last meeting in regards to a form of, what was it called? I forgot what it was, but it was a recording thing for applicants when they were taking the test.
Remote proctoring?
Yeah, the proctor. So was that referred to committee or was that would that be a part of that subcommittee, or is that something separate, or what was
So
the
the
update?
online proctoring, so Kareem, you're referring to the presentation we did on online
Yeah.
proctoring, and the CBE made the motion that we can advance exploring the online
okay.
proctoring. So we're in that process. So we're looking, we submitted a request to the NCB for permission to proceed with that. We received more questions, so we're in the process of meeting with the NCBE, coming up with a proposal to possibly implement perhaps by the February 2019 bar exam. So there are some things that we have to spec out. So
Okay.
we are exploring that.
Okay.
So should we put that on our
Should we add it
homework
to this?
list then?
Yeah, we can do that. Absolutely.
Sorry, it came up randomly. But part of my questioning was a part of, have we engaged any of the, because going to the convention center, and I think Ontario is one of the bigger sites that you have, logistically, I was concerned about how that'd be implemented and if we were engaging staff at that level on that implementation. So just trying to elevate, just from my lens, I just saw a management, it might create additional logistical issues, so if there's a way that we could incorporate staff at that level in this decision making, I think would be extremely helpful.
Yeah, and you're right, Kareem, you went to Ontario to a standard test site. And
yes.
that's a large volume of folks.
Yeah.
And I think our intent is to start with testing accommodation, which is more resource intensive. That requires a one-on-one proctoring, not for all testing accommodations, but for some specifically. And so I think the intent is for us to start at that level
Okay.
and then grow it from that point.
Yeah, and that was, I didn't know that either, that we had specific locations that provide accommodations and certain that are standard. And so I would love to visit an accommodation. So I think it was in Orange County that provides that, or is it Pasadena? That's closest to me.
Oh, yeah. Tammy, can you recall from the top of your head, what is a testing accommodation site in Los Angeles that would be close to Kareem?
Oh, Inland Empire preferred, but
So the closest one to you is probably going to be Orange,
Okay.
over in Orange County.
okay.
And that's the Doubletree Orange over off of the City Drive.
Okay.
Or San Diego.
Well,
Well, I don't know which one's the easier drive for you, but
county for sure.
so if you go to San Diego, it'll be at the Sheraton Mission Valley in July.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. So that will come back, I'm sure, at our next meeting, or where do you foresee we will?
We can add it to our updates just to keep everybody updated
okay.
on the progress of where we're at with the online proctoring, and also in our discussions with the NCB as we create a formal proposal for that. But I think that we now have to probably modify this motion, right, to add the online proctoring.
Why don't you just bring it back on the next one?
Okay.
Yeah,
We'll
that'd
see it
be.
then.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Can I ask, Amy, is this the committee that would look at testing accommodation processes more generally?
Yes.
Because I'm sure all of you have read the college admissions scandal, the media stories on that. And several board members now have asked me, and relayed that message internally, to take a look at our bar
application process, but specifically the testing accommodation process, because if you'll recall, part of the issue at the undergraduate level is this sort of falsification of various disabilities, and that end up resulting in folks getting more time to take exams at the undergraduate level. And so the board is concerned that that may be going on with respect to the bar exam, and interested to know what we are doing to potentially mitigate against that. So that may be something, if the work plan is coming back, that we could add on to the plan, or perhaps
Actually,
it's already there. I'm sorry.
Robbie and I had spoken earlier this morning, and he was going to make a comment under the report on operations and management expressing concern, and I think that it's a legitimate concern. I think that we finished with the examination. Let's talk about operations.
Can I add one thing, though? We already have, if you look at our the item, which is our goals, we're going to look, and we plan to have 2 sessions on testing accommodations. One is a walk, exploration of our current process. We wanted to do a presentation on what is the process for registration of testing accommodation applicants. So I think that's a good opportunity for us to look at the program and gather feedback on whether any modifications are necessary. And the second thing we're doing is also a presentation that we talked about as a result of Lisa and I going to the Testing Accommodations Disability Forum last year. We want to bring a presenter that talks about the process, ideally how it should work when it comes to receiving consultant reports, factors to be considered in our appeals process and our decision-making process. So we have those 2 presentations forthcoming this year.
Sorry. On testing accommodations, the doctors who, send in their letters of recommendation as to what they think the applicant should have, I know as a non-doctor, if it hadn't been for the doctor who is on examinations, I would have never known that the doctor who was giving his opinion was not really qualified to give an applicant the kind of requesting the accommodation. So I never know. Is that looked at on a staff level?
So I think you need to be more specific. So you're suggesting that the person that, so every testing accommodation application or petition for a testing accommodation requires a medical documentation. And you're suggesting that, and some of that is, it includes a doctor's note, that doctor's note may not be an expert for that person's condition.
I mean, I don't think that the guy was a podiatrist and was looking at psychological, things that were, going on with this one applicant, but the doctor who had given the recommendation wasn't really qualified to give the kind of request or recommendation.
Well, we have consultants that factor that in. So consultants look at the diagnosis process and the information that's provided in that medical report, and so that is one of the things that our consultants factor in.
Yes, doctor.
Thank you. So I think what she is trying to say is that we've had instances where our consultant was of the specialty, meaning psychology, granting accommodations for physical disabilities for which he has never been trained. Mm-hmm. And that is where I have been rather ornery about insisting that he is the wrong consultant to give us that opinion.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I believe that we brought that here and discussed it, that's what we try to do as when we make our staff recommendations that we bring here. We speak on the physical disabilities, and we allow the doctors to make the psychologist or psychiatrist to make a recommendation on the mental health aspects of those applications.
But we have allowed our consultant who does not have a degree in medicine or osteopathy to render an opinion which we have accepted as a committee for a physical disability, and that is where I feel we should not be doing that.
Yeah.
I'm not, and I'm also kind of interested to find out what qualifications we look for in our consultants. I mean, there must be a job description somewhere, but one particular psychologist has never addressed a lot of the testing that the so-called psychologists that have been provided to the applicant. He's never addressed it. I am very suspicious he actually lacks the skills. And so in understanding how we pick our consultants is what I'm hoping we'll get to hear a bit more of. Now, I've also been told that for physical accommodations that there is a process within examinations which doesn't involve anybody that's been trained within the healthcare field, identifying before it's come to us whether or not physical accommodation should be granted. I think that when we have this look at people who are appealing their disabilities, we can see historical references where they've been granted accommodations on so-called physical disabilities which never came through our group because it had been automatically granted by some other entity within our committee.
Okay, so one of the things we can do is we know we're going to have a presentation on our testing accommodation process. We can incorporate the recruitment process for our consultants, so that would be more clear as to how we select them and how also the parameters of their position, and that is they stick to the mental health diagnosis. If there's been situations where that physical disability, perhaps we need to remind them, but I believe it's not, when that happens, we have not acted on that or simply on their recommendation. So we can incorporate that as part of our presentation.
And I think we can be open to changing our process because I think one legitimate question is, should you have a consultant for physical disabilities? Why do we have it only for mental health circumstances? So I think the intention is to look at this broadly and determine if, in fact, changes are needed, even if they are quite significant.
Michael?
I would like to take the initiative on this because based on my background and personal experience, this is a sensitive topic, and especially if this committee is exploring more of the undergraduate background or college background of candidates, I'd like to be involved with that. So I just want to express my interest in taking the initiative on this, I guess, new exploration.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments? If not, let's go to operations and management. Ravi?
Okay, and before I get into our guidelines, administer the bar exam. So that recent college admissions scandal had really two components. One was donations paid to colleges to have children of the donors admitted into school, and the other component was cheating on the SAT and ACT. So this really has a lot of parallels to the bar exam. And again, as Leah said, the cheating method used successfully was to request ADA accommodations resulting in a private room for the test taking, and then the proctor changing the answers. So that was how it was done. So there's been a lot of discussion. I actually am comfortable with our process for vetting ADA accommodations. I mean, we're doing what we can do, but I think where we need to be more vigilant rather than perhaps, prejudicing a legitimate ADA applicant is to ensure on the back end that there's no relationship between the proctor and anyone else, because that's how it happened. As the New York Times said, the other LA college cheating scandal that you may have missed, there were 2 in 1 week. The other was all at UCLA, and it involved people taking the TOEFL exam for Chinese nationals. It's pretty bad. One UCLA student took the TOEFL exam, which is the test of English as a foreign language, a requirement that you get a certain score on that test for most colleges in the US. So one UCLA student took that test 39 times for 39 different applicants from China using changed IDs, passports. So the fallout to all of this, in addition to what's happening with the criminal prosecution, is the schools themselves have really gotten black eyes for being, complicit in what apparently is a big cheating scandal, and the schools have been sued. And it really calls into question the fairness of the admissions process, and we've got to do what we can to make sure that there's never a question about the fairness of the bar exam. Because if this were to occur, unsuccessful applicants, which is what's happening at Yale and UCLA, unsuccessful applicants for admission are suing, claiming that their seats were taken by cheaters. So I think going forward, the emphasis should be, I'm not sure what would be the best way to attack. Maybe only have staff people doing the accommodation testing that are vetted, that work for the bar. But it's out there. It's never affected the bar, to my knowledge. We're pretty rigorous. But now that I see the extent to which the cheaters have gone, changing IDs, changing passports, changing driver's licenses, involving third parties, many of our proctors, if not most, just come from temp agencies. So we've used them in the past, but we don't have a real relationship with them, and I think that is the in for a cheater. And the TOEFL exam is nothing compared to the bar exam. I mean, this is a much more impactful, so it's out there. Meanwhile,
for AI proctoring.
Yeah.
So take the human out of the proctoring.
Yes,
AI proctoring, at least, something along those lines. But I guess I want to make sure that we're doing everything that we can do to verify the ID of the app. In the TOEFL scandal, I mean, it's pretty bad. I mean, this person was a number of people in successive days, and I'm not exactly sure how they did it, but I don't know if our ID process needs to be expanded to fingerprint, or, I don't know. But we just need, I think, now that standardized testing is on the table as rife for abuse, we at the bar, I think, need to be hypersensitive to that to ensure that we're giving a test that's fair to everyone.
Okay. Well, and another thing is that our online proctoring proposal wouldn't remove the identification process. We would still have, people coming in to register with their ID as they do for the bar exam. So, I think that the identification process is built into our plan for the online proctoring. And as a matter of fact, if you remember the demonstration, that first part that was demonstrated by the Proctor U had a significant amount of time spent on ensuring that the identity of that person that used the face as well as an ID, but we would be handling that physically at each of the locations, because that one-on-one proctoring is what would be replaced, but we would still need the floor section proctors that we talked about, the people on the floor, the section proctors, staffing part of that as well. Michael,
And truth be told, I'm not even sure if driver license checking IDs is a foolproof method. I actually can, if I need to and want to, can get a falsified ID. I mean, and Proctor doesn't have any means by which to actually authenticate IDs at the location of the test sites. So having checking ID isn't entirely foolproof. But also I am concerned that I think just reading from New York Times, the conspiracy relied on parents getting falsified documentations from physicians to get extra time or extra accommodation. So really the bigger question is on the accommodation side, how to prevent things of this nature from happening? Because as we know, it isn't entirely difficult to approach a doctor and say, hey, I am not feeling well, or I am having some kind of disorders. Can you write me a letter to ascertain that I can get extra accommodation from a test exam, for example? So how do we prevent that?
Some of this is going to get revealed in our testing accommodation presentation, but let me just say that when we get a petition for a testing accommodation, and I'm going to walk through, for example, one that is a psychological disorder, we receive that, we send that out to a consultant, and our staff is reading that too in order to make both a recommendation or or to respond to that in the form of an approval, a denial, and when those come back, to recommend it for, to ensure that we have a comprehensive package to bring to the committee here for as an appeals process. And so there are multiple sets of people that review these applications, so it's not a single individual's determination. And, we have some people who have historically established this pattern, and there's a lot of factors that we consider. I mean, Dusty's provided us with the ADA requirements that are factored into that consideration. And this includes things like, previous accommodations that somebody may have held from like high school and on. I mean, we also look at the diagnosis, their medical reports as well as our consultant's report. And so it's not one single letter that's required. I mean, there's a pattern that needs to be established. And I don't know, Dusty, if you want to speak to other factors that we need to keep, legal factors that we need to keep in mind when we're making our determinations as well.
One thing that comes up a lot is if someone has been provided an accommodation on a previous similar high-stakes examination, we do have to give substantial credit to that when considering whether or not to grant one for the bar exam. So that's one thing that we see a lot that we do have to make sure that we're taking into consideration.
And I want to say, I think Brody's point is good, but again, we are the ones that vet that process, and I don't want the bar to be perceived as discriminating against ADA qualified applicants because of a few bad apples. We do the vetting process here, and I think, Dusty, that is the best barometer when you have a pattern of requesting and receiving accommodations in high school, in college, in law school. I think the stage is set for accommodating that applicant in a similar fashion after the bar. When someone has never had an accommodation, failed the bar, and all of a sudden requested new accommodations, then that's one that we look at probably the most closely. But again, I'm happy, I mean, having been on the committee of bar examiners, I'm content with that practice. The practice that I'm concerned about is making sure that we've identified the applicant and that there is no chance that there's any collusion between the applicant and anybody else involved in the administration of the bar exam. Looking at and I wonder, Amy, if maybe we could add this to our goals, which is maybe an ongoing review of ensuring, because it's really not one of our goals, but maybe in light of these scandals, we could make this an actual goal for the future, ensuring the test taking veracity or something along those lines.
Okay.
The goals that I'm sure everyone's had an opportunity to look at the operations and management goals prepared by Tammy. Does anybody have any comments or questions about the ones we've got?
No, but about the one you wish to add, I just had a question, I guess. So, is the organization going to do like a task force or a work group that's going to look for areas, or is something the board just requested? Or I guess I'm trying to figure out like what's the long-term approach to it.
Well, I'm going to defer to Donna and Amy. I don't think at this time we've been thinking about a work group other than CBE or a committee of CBE focusing on this issue.
Well, and Kareem, we added this as an agenda item. What we presented in our planning meeting at the last session at the beginning of February, we added this topic. One of the things, because of the timing of the events that just recently occurred, we could try to move it up in advance, because I think it's scheduled for something like either August. I think it might be August, a presentation. We could try to move it up, because the idea then is to walk through the system and gather feedback in the event that we need to go back and revisit components of our testing accommodation request process. Right? I mean, with that.
Yeah, I mean, I would. It would be helpful if we could
Do it sooner.
Yeah.
Okay.
Please.
Yeah. Well,
Thank you, Rob.
Oh, Dolores?
Yes.
I think it's a good idea to be vigilant and check into all of these procedures. But I believe that, and I would be more concerned, I should say, I would be more concerned if we had a very high passage rate. But since our passage rate is fairly low, I think we're either doing a good job, and I would hate to see it even drop further, because we are denying accommodations to people who might really need them.
Yeah, and again, I think from O&M standpoint, the focus should be on just ensuring that the applicant is the person who she or he says they are, and that we've got a fair environment for all.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a motion to approve these O&M goals?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you very much. Next, we have educational standards, Natalie and Alex.
Great, thank you. So a few items. 0400 is a discussion on the draft implementation plan for accrediting online JD programs. This item is for informational purposes, a draft law school accreditation application that incorporates approved amendments to the accredited law school rules and guidelines. The approved amendments add a new option allowing the California accreditation of online JD programs. The attached application plus self-study reports for provisional California accreditation ask schools to demonstrate compliance with the rules and guidelines for the accredited law schools as amended by the Board of Trustees in November 2017. The amendments permit law schools delivering their JD programs through distance learning to seek California accreditation. Currently, California accredited schools are required to offer classroom-based fixed facility JD programs with no more than 12 credits earned through distance learning. I know that Natalie has sort of a presentation that she can share some additional information, but Natalie, you want to share any other comments before showcasing the PowerPoint?
As usual, you've teed it up well.
Okay, thank you. So I'll turn it over to you to add any more comments.
Okay. So terrific. So thank you to everyone in the committee for your leadership and your guidance in creating these guidelines. For some of you, you participated in the program, which began back in 2013. For others of you who have joined the CBE recently, this may be new information. So we're refreshing some of you and happy to take questions from others. So just to get everyone on the same page, we already have online JD programs here in California. Registered unaccredited programs can be fully online, and we have several such schools offering those type of programs, some with extremely strong pass rates well above the NPR requirement that they would need if they were California accredited. Just as a placeholder so you can see what the ABA has been doing at the same time, the California accredited schools have been required to be classroom, offering no more than 12 credits via distance, and the ABA also offered classroom, allowing up to 15 credits via distance. But most recently, just a few months ago, they increased that amount to 30 credits, which is about 1/3 of the credits that most students would need to graduate. So under these new online amendments that were recommended by this group and approved by the Board of Trustees, the only change you'll see is in that center column with respect to California accredited schools. So the California accredited schools will have as many options as the registered unaccredited schools have always had. So a classroom program can be accredited, a blended program that includes more than 12 credits of distance plus classroom can be accredited, and also a fully online program can be accredited. Just a quick recap of the process that you went through to create these rules. The discussion began here in the committee back in March 2013, and because this was very different, because this is the first accreditation of a fully online program, and it does so in advance of the ABA, you sought a lot of feedback. You did 2 rounds of this feedback. First, a working group composed of members from the committee, but also members from each of the types of law schools. Their deans participated. You had a public forum. You also had staff research. That information came back. You had further discussion. That process repeated again. At that conclusion, you looked at a package of proposals which became these online amendments to the rules and guidelines. It was sent out for public comment, and then this was adopted by the Board of Trustees back in November 2017. Now, you might say, November 2017, what has been happening in the meantime? Because normally rules go into effect immediately or perhaps at a specific date or January 1st of the following year. But this time, as those rules were approved, two other things were going on that counseled we should wait just a little bit. The first one is BAR was in the midst of the Appendix I review, which was directed by the Governance and the Public Interest Task Force. And one of the things under study was just the operation of the committee itself. So it seemed to make sense for that to complete. The other thing that was going on was that you were looking at the schools in general, and you were looking at some other proposals as well, and some of those remain under study. So the good news is the Appendix I process has completed with respect to educational standards, but that just happened at the end of January with the Board of Trustees, so it's time to go forward. And in doing so, we noticed that the online amendments can go forward, but the other things that were considered primarily related to a potential mandatory path to accreditation for registered schools, that's not ready to go forward. If it does proceed, it would require further rules of court changes. It would also require further statutory changes, and those are not under consideration at this time. So we can go forward with the online amendments. We're showing you the rules that you've requested in the past. The difference is we're simply showing you those approved rules by themselves, not with the other unrelated proposals standing beside them. We're bringing this back here to the committee where this proposal originated. We'll also be bringing it to CS BARS, the new committee that has representation from the registered schools and accredited schools, just to make sure that the application makes sense, they don't have any questions, they know how to apply, and we'll also be bringing it informationally to the Board of Trustees in May as well. So what happens from here? I think that we believe that once all of these groups have reviewed and are comfortable with the feedback, we should be able to post and release the rules and the application shortly thereafter. Certainly by the time the pass lists are released for the February bar exam, that is in June. And that's important in terms of timing because that allows the schools to calculate their 2019 minimum pass rate that they will need to follow as accredited schools. So what's different about these rules? What you'll see is that we'll be moving from a standard credit-based system to a more elastic system that will allow the schools to innovate and offer different types of educational delivery. So now you'll see the schools talking about engagement, and the schools will be required to establish 1,200 hours of engagement across the JD program. Part of those hours, the majority of those hours, will need to be recorded in some way, but they'll have a lot of options as to how to do that. And they will have to be able to document that tracking to the committee. The other changes that you'll see to the rules really just flow from this initial change, adjusting the rules anywhere that they were previously limited only to classroom study, and also making the term structure a little bit more flexible, because now with the online programs, sometimes people will be able to take student courses on demand through taped programs. Sometimes they'll be doing it live, asking questions of the professors, etc. And so this contemplates that. The application process will be very similar to what you've seen before for any type of accreditation from any school. There'll be an initial application as well as a self-study, and a school can submit both at the same time, or they might decide just to submit the application first. They might submit the application first to get more guidance from the committee, and also to calculate and verify their MPR. That can be a little challenging to calculate for the school the first time, and they may just want to break up the tasks and have the assurance of knowing that their MPR is compliant before undertaking the significant effort related to the application and any follow-on inspection. So that's what's intended. In a way, it's very novel, something that's never been done before. In another way, it builds on the structure that you have always used here at the committee. So we're hoping that it incorporates the best of both worlds for you. And we're glad to bring it to you for your information.
And Natalie, can you comment, like, because I know probably what is on the mind of some committee members is like maybe a tentative schedule of the rollout?
Sure. So part of it depends on the feedback we get as to the usability of the application. We hope that it will be very easy to use as it stands right now. And assuming that's the case, shortly after the Board of Trustees approves the rules in May, we believe that the materials will be able to be posted and applications will be able to be accepted.
Great. Any comments? Yes, Kareem.
Mr. Chair. Natalie, do we know what other jurisdictions are doing, or have we approached that, or is that something that we look to do?
Well, here, we don't have this type of school in other jurisdictions. We are definitely aware of the ABA and the types of programs that they are looking at. They have a couple of hybrid programs, 2 of them in California, one at Southwestern, one in Loyola. We're looking at their hybrids, we're looking at their pilot programs, we're looking at the way they define engagement so that we can share best practices between the 2 bodies.
Thank you.
Yes.
Is there an online school that you anticipate is going to apply?
I believe that there are several that would, and we have already internally started to run MPR statistics to determine the schools that we think would have at least that first step of an MPR that is qualifying. Because these rules have been under discussion for a long time, I believe that there are several schools that have been specifically positioning their curriculum and adjusting their admission standards to take advantage of these rules quite quickly. I believe that you would see applications certainly by the summer.
And I guess they have a dean that will have a GAD that is actually running this online program.
Yes, absolutely. And they will further need to have a locus of control here in California as well. And so in most cases, I would expect that these would be schools that would be familiar to the committee, just previously operating in a registered unaccredited status.
Natalie, if I could comment real quick. One of the comforts that I had is our rules and guidelines are pretty straightforward, especially when it comes to our bar passage rate requirement is 40%. So that's going to be passed down to these online schools as a part of their process as well. So I think that kind of creates a little sense of comfort that we're going to keep that consistency and equality.
That's true, and the schools will need to reach that minimum MPR before they are eligible to be considered for the accreditation as well. So they should have been working toward that type of standard. Something else to keep in mind in addition is that we will be doing a review of the rules in totality beginning in the summer, just to make sure that the rules are incorporating best practices. It's been around a decade since the registered schools have come, so it's time to do that, and that was an official part of Appendix I. So you will have another opportunity to look and nip and tuck and adjust these rules as you go forward. One thing we've learned is that technology changes quickly. And so the moment the rules are created, technology evolves ahead of them. And I believe that we will continue to be aware of that and continue to offer the opportunity to adjust.
Any other comments or questions? No? Okay, so moving on to item 0401, request for approval of California Southern Law School, request for a major change, waiver of inspection requirement and deregistration in 2020. For some background, the school was founded in 1971. It has over 440 alumni. The school decided to begin the closure process after its founder passed away in 2016. CSLS has not enrolled any new students, but has continued to teach its current students. 5 students are scheduled to graduate in spring this year, 15, and the remaining 15 are scheduled to graduate in the spring of 2020. The school seeks a waiver of the requirement to undergo the periodic inspection, and as a reminder, under Rule 4.244 of the unaccredited law school rules, a registered law school must be inspected every 5 years or more frequently if the committee determines that an inspection is required to assess compliance with these rules. Natalie, you want to add any additional information?
The only thing I would note is that the careful observer might see in the school's request that initially they asked for a closure of June 1st, but after further consideration, they bumped it to September 1st. They don't expect to be teaching in the summer, but they thought it would provide additional assurance to the students that should they have any questions over the summer while preparing for the bar exam, that the school would be available to them. And that's consistent with the engagement and care they've continued to show throughout this teach-out process.
Judith?
I just want to make a statement about the school in Riverside, which is where I've been a court reporter for many, many years. They have produced some absolutely incredible attorneys who have shown themselves to be above and beyond the norm, and I'm just making that as a statement to appreciate what has been, and we will miss them. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more comments? Can I get a motion? And there is a staff recommendation, but would like to open it up if someone would like to make a motion. Well, and again, want to make sure that everybody is clear, and if the group is open to it, I will read the recommendation. That move that the committee grant California Southern School of Law's request to terminate its registration voluntarily effective September 1st, 2020, with the custodian of records to be designated as a registrar and assistant to the dean, Greg Rich, that the law school's name be removed from the list of registered unaccredited law schools maintained by the State Bar of California on September 1st, 2020, and that the school be granted a waiver canceling its 5-year periodic inspection that was to be scheduled in 2019. So again, is there a motion? Second. Is there a second? Great. All those in favor? Aye. Any objections? Thank you. Yes.
Why do they need our permission to go out of business?
well, they're looking to waive the periodic inspection report that would normally the group would have to conduct.
That's irrelevant. They're going out of business. So why do they need our permission? I'm just curious.
May I comment? Part of that is we are, in some cases, if the school were to close on short notice, that may happen. And we've had that happen in certain cases, especially when there are financial issues, as we mentioned earlier. But we put this process in place because sometimes, as here, it is voluntary or there is some notice, and it gives the committee the opportunity to have notice and to know that the school has created a teach-out plan or that the emergency makes it impossible for the school to do so. And then the committee can step in to protect the students and protect the public.
Okay, so we will move on to item 0402, notice of changes in law school administrators. San Francisco Law School, Alliant International University, Catherine Van Tassel has resigned as the dean. Timothy P. Weimer will become interim dean and continue his role as registrar and be supported by the newly appointed assistant registrar, Anthony Cravato. And Abraham Lincoln Law University School of Law, the school has a new registrar led by Lopez, who is a member of ALU staff, transitioning to the role effective March 18, 2019. And item 0403, discussion about our goals for the committee. I want to point out a couple things and maybe just be mindful of for consideration of the current goals incorporate the post appendix I recommendations, and also the current goals also incorporate our bar goal related to tracking and encouraging diverse recruitment, retention, and graduation in the law schools. Metrics will be placed in place by the time the annual reports come out in the fall. I want to open it up because I know that some people have looked at the goals, and we've been talking throughout this morning, some things that may also impact goals, but I want to open it up to a group for comment, questions. I don't see any questions or hands in the air, so can I get a motion to approve the goals?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any objection? Thank you.
Thank you. And the next item is moral character. Jim Efting is in court in Palo Alto, I believe. So, Mark, do you have any information or any comments regarding the moral character goals?
There are no changes to the goals.
Okay, then we don't need to take any action. Okay, that concludes our open session. We are going to take about a 10-minute recess, and then we will go into closed session. So, thank you.
I think if you just hand it to Patricia, she can probably pass it on down.
Okay. Okay, we are now convened in closed session, and we are going to shut down the webcasting. So wait just a few minutes before that is completely shut down, and we will begin our session. Thank you.